Chapter 4. Vita Incerta. Webb's brain awoke before the rest of her, and as she lay there in the oddly chatter-filled darkness in her head, wincing at her blossoming hangover, she wondered where the whispers were coming from. Distant whispers, but not too far, like a crowd of gossipers gabbing in the next room. There was an urgency to their conversation, an edge of panic that gave way to a rhythmic pounding in her skull. That pounding gave way to the actual pounding coming from behind Chelsea's bunk panel. Webb groaned. Her body was awake now, and it had more than a few complaints to lodge. Her brain had grown spikes that were stabbing out in all directions. How one can drink so much and yet awaken dehydrated was one of the great mysteries of the universe. At least the lights were off. She looked down towards the spot between bunks where Frankie usually meditated. Frankie wasn't there. A twinge of guilt wove through the brain spikes. Frankie must have left for her shift early, which would probably make Webb's last day easier, not starting with another fight and all. Guilt and regret clawed at her. Webb hadn't known yesterday that today would be her final day in uniform. She hadn't even told her station mates yet. They likely knew by now. Doubtless Dewey did. There was a reaming she wasn't looking forward to. Webb looked to the ceiling of her too-short bunk and realized, with a jolt, that she'd just slept her last night in it. Where would she be after today? In the cargo hold, dodging looks from unassigned crew who couldn't believe she'd given up a quad berth. Whatever. Issues for later. Chelsea's bunk panel was down. Rob had gotten his shirt halfway on before he'd noticed her.
"Oh, hey,"
He flushed, nudged Chelsea.
"Webb's up. Hope we didn't wake you."
Webb tried to speak. It came out in a dry heave. Her mouth tasted like she'd eaten a cardigan.
"Come again?"
"I'm good," said Chelsea. Webb swallowed her mouth clear.
"Rob, hey, I've heard you guys have some magical rehydration spray? The hangover pill?"
He finished pulling his shirt on.
"Yeah, that's not part of the crew medical package. Sorry."
Webb grunted. She eyed the door to the bath chamber. She still needed that shower. And she could drink the water. She had about a week's worth of hydro rations to cash out. She dropped to her feet, put a hand on her temple to steady herself. Her hair was plastered into a plate on the side of her head. When did Frankie leave? "About 30 seconds before I calmed Rob," said Chelsea. Webb didn't have the energy to glare. "You bunked when you knew I was here?" "You were passed out," said Chelsea. "On the floor."
"Unresponsive,"
added Rob.
"Chelsea thought you were dead. You weren't, though. We tucked you in."
"Left your uni on, though." They had. Dress uniforms did not make comfy pajamas. "Did Frank have an early shift?" Chelsea drew the covers over herself. "I don't think it's as early as you think it is." The door slid open. Light from the hall stabbed Webb's brain. She shielded her eyes with a whimper. "Frankie, is that you?" It was not. At the door stood a mousy woman with a key card and a duffel over her shoulder. She looked surprised that the key card had worked. "Is this 1262B?"
"Yeah,"
croaked Webb.
"Hey."
Mousy held up her quad assignment. "Good morning. Hi, Oh." She went pale. Well, paler, when she saw Chelsea's uniform on the floor, and the half-naked man in her bunk. I can come back." "You're in the right place." Webb waved her in. "We quad with a cop." "Officer Almeida to you," said Chelsea. "This is Rob. He's not here."
"Hi,"
said Rob. "Honey, pants."
"Right."
Rob retroused himself.
"I was just leaving."
Mousy looked no less confused. "I thought soldiers were berthed in the barracks." "We're supposed to be," said Chelsea, "but there aren't enough lady grunts to fill our own garrison, and housing us with men is a scandal just waiting to happen, so they stick us in the quads. I'm as happy about it as you are. Could you get the door, please? I'm naked." Mousy flushed and hiccuped. She closed the door. "Sorry, strange morning. Okay, let's try this again." She checked her housing order. "Hello, Chelsea, Francine, and Joni. And Rob."
"Hi."
"It's nice to meet you. My name is—" "Your name," interrupted Chelsea, "is Yolanda 8. 8 blinked. She opened and closed her mouth a few times. "Sorry? If you're still with us after 6 months, you get your real name. In the meantime, we're not getting attached. Welcome to the quad. Don't touch my guns." 8 looked from quaddy to quaddy. Webb could see her doing the math in her head. "Hold on. 8? You're wondering what happened to the rest." "I wasn't a moment ago."
"I'll go,"
said Rob. "You'll stay." Chelsea started buttoning her jacket. If you were at the funeral, you heard what happened to 7. She almost made it the full 6. We're pretty shook up about it. Now, 6? Can we not do this now? Said Webb. It's my last damn morning, and I've got a pulsar of a headache. Oh, 8 searched for something else to say. It was a pleasure meeting you. Don't let her fool you, said Chels. She's not going anywhere. Webb regarded Chels flatly. I resigned, Jarhead. And I'm sure it will stick. This is the only home you know. Webb's anger surged. You know what? I can come back, said 8. Shut it, noob, Chels shimmied into her pants. Let's start from the top. It'll be easier. The first Yolanda Prime, was our original quaddie. Great lady, total infotech nerd. Loved her to pieces. She got scattered in a teleporter accident. Webb scoffed. Accident. There were warnings of solar flare activity, but the brass ignored them so they wouldn't have to fall behind schedule. One erupted while she was in midstream, dispersed her signature, and they could never put her back together. 8 recoiled. That's horrid. Right? You never even know what happened to you. Energized. Poof. Atoms everywhere. Rob, I'm hungry. Yeah. He gave her a meal pack, a peck, and hopped down from the bunk. Nice to meet you. I honestly hope you're the very last Yolanda. Out he went. 2 was here less than a week, said Chels. She got crushed in the shipquake. Bulkhead dropped on her when the inertial dampeners failed. That's kind of where the tradition began. The rest of us couldn't remember her name. Megan, said Webb. A woman with hair so red her head looked on fire. One who'd wanted to hang a Utah State pennant above the door. That's all Webb remembered of her. 3 was cool, said Chels. She lasted a couple months before she got herself brigged for stealing rations. That's the official story. Scuttlebutt was she wouldn't sleep with the officer who took her to dinner, so he reported the food stolen. And as far as we know, she's still in the meat locker. Jesus. 8 sank to the floor with a hiccup. Chels, said Webb, you're freaking her out. Good. That means she's paying attention. I'm doing this to help you, 8. I hope you understand that. Where were... Oh, right. 4's the current record holder. 2 days in, her shuttle lost pressure when it hit Atmo and burped all the passengers to soup. Jesus fuck! That's what we said. Now 5... Webb and 8's badges chimed in unison. They exchanged a look. Webb's resigned. 8's alarmed. Away mission crew, report to Shuttle Bay, said the Independents. Webb checked her chronometer. 10 minutes to departure. Her shower would have to wait. Again. Good luck, 8, Chels waved once. Try not to break the record. With a clap and a bump, the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The stars went from blinding streaks to dots on the main screen of the bridge. The ship settled into orbit above a sickly yellow planet with swirling storms blanketing its atmosphere. It was the color of an aging banana with moving spots. Acheron 117, announced the helm officer, aptly named after a river in hell. Thank you, Mr. Metz. Commander Young rose from his chair beside the captain's. Scan for signs of the flagstaff. Winesboro tapped a few keys at the science station. The sandstorms are interfering with the scans. Too many silicates in the atmosphere. Even for a ship that size? They're bouncing the signal everywhere, Pat. All right, let's go visual. Look for signs of the crash. The view zoomed towards the surface through the storms, losing resolution as it went. It came to rest on a strange black grid zigzagging out from an equatorial mountain range. Young squinted. Can you enhance? A little, said Winesboro. But we'll have to extrapolate the planet's topography. Wait. Break in the storm. Some rapid key tapping. Here we go. The zigzags jumped into focus. Stone construction of some sort. The pattern was too geometrical to be natural. Closer, said Young. Their view slid in again, gliding along enormous ruins weathered by time and erosion, stretching for kilometers in either direction. Young approached the screen in awe. Ruins? On a dead planet? That appears to be the case, Commander. Was there anything about this in our files? Nothing. For once, Winesboro seemed more curious than annoyed. And nothing from the Flagstaff's reports. Commander, we need to reshuffle the away teams, said Sivos. Possible Xeno presence requires an expeditionary force. Scan for biosigns again, said Young. Scans are negative, said Winesboro. And that's not just the storm interference. There's a distinct lack of organic matter in the atmosphere, and in what we can scan of the soil. And who built those? A mystery soon to be revealed, the captain said over the comms. The door to his cabin slid open. Blackwell rose from his duty station. Captain on the bridge! The officers all rose in surprise. Young greeted Seagrave with a salute at the command dais. "Captain, it's good to see you on your feet again. How are you feeling?" "Right as rain," said the captain, who was paler than usual. Young nodded. "Will you be monitoring the mission from the bridge?" "From far closer, Mr. Young. I'll be leading it." Young flicked his eyes to the doctor and back. "Is that wise, sir? You've been on medical leave." Seagrave narrowed his eyes. "There's nothing wrong with my backbone, Commander. I'm merely concerned about your health." "Shall I scan you, Captain?" offered Marwazi. "It wouldn't take but a moment." Seagrave shooed him away. "If Xenos are involved, my own discomfort is a minor sacrifice." Young leaned in. "That's very noble, sir, but the doctor hasn't cleared you for duty. We don't know what was causing your gastric distress." "My withdrawal was voluntary," said Seagrave. "I was not placed under medical leave." "You haven't set foot on the bridge in 2 days." "And you've gotten used to that, have you?" He said it with a smirk, and louder than necessary. "The chair's not yours yet, Mr. Young. The crew needs to see their captain in action." He didn't take his eyes off Young as he said, "Status update." "Getting to the surface will be an issue," said Winesboro. "Thank you, Wino, but I didn't ask you," said Seagrave. "I'd like to hear it from the commander." Young stiffened. "Sir, due to the particulates in the atmosphere, any teleporter signature we attempt to send down is in danger of being scattered." "I'm hearing problems. What I want are solutions." "Well, for one, we should send a team down in a shuttle," said Blackwell. "Have them drop a teleporter anchor. It should strengthen the beam enough to allow for teleportation." "Very good," said Seagrave. "See? Was that so hard? Proceed." Young looked a warning at Blackwell. "Sir, sending a shuttle through that storm is an unnecessary risk. Wouldn't it be wiser to wait for it to clear?" "Time is of the essence," said the captain. "You recall the Admiral's words, Commander?" "I do, sir," said Young. "But even if we strengthen the signal enough for teleportation, if the storm's intensity increases, the anchor may not be enough, at which point we may have more crew on the surface than we can fit in the shuttle." Seagrave rolled his eyes. "Yes, I'm aware of the passenger capacity of our shuttles, Commander. I've been in those a few times." He rose, tugged his uniform taut. "Lieutenant Commander, proceed with the plan and meet me at the teleporter. Commander, the bridge is yours." Young froze. "You want me here?" The captain regarded him languidly. "You had other plans?" "I was going to lead an away team." "Yes, in the vanguard exploring the ruins. Commander, it is unbecoming of a senior officer to put his personal interest above the needs of the ship." "Sir, I'm sure there will be plenty of time after the mission for you to collect artifacts. In the meantime, you can stay here next to that chair you haven't earned." Young pressed his mouth into a line. "Aye, sir." Webb clutched her head, as if that could steady the shaking. It did nothing to blot out the roar of the thrusters. Riding a shuttle down through a continent-wide dust storm wasn't doing wonders for her hangover. She wasn't going to puke. Not here. Not in this tiny space in front of her peers. Definitely not in front of that lanky Armstrong who hardly looked old enough to shave. "I heard there were ruins on the planet." 8 was still trying to make conversation. "That's pretty exciting, right? We'll get to see them first." Webb ground her eyes shut and gripped her harness. "I'm sure sending us first has nothing to do with making sure they're not booby-trapped." "You think the officers will come down?" "For a chance to loot the ruins? Are you kidding? You know how much Xeno artifacts go for at auction?" "Brace for the storm," said the pilot. Webb looked up in alarm. "Wait, for the storm?" "We haven't hit it yet," said 8. "That buffeting was all stratosphere." Webb's heart sank. Her stomach followed, tripped, flipped, and tried to empty itself. No. Not puking here. She tamped it back down. The storm hit them with the force of a tidal wave. Webb held her harness in a death grip as the shuttle bounced around like a ping-pong ball on a shop vac. She wanted to shout at the pilot to pump the stabilizers. She could hear the excuse. They needed to get through the cell first. Couldn't afford to slow momentum and linger in the winds. Not that that would matter if the aileron snapped. Grit soup sprayed against the view screen. With a stomach-punching lurch, the shuttle dropped a kilometer in a heartbeat. Everyone screamed before it stabilized again. 8, quivering like a chihuahua, reached out to touch Webb's arm. "It's okay." Did Webb really look that distraught? "We're okay. Statistically speaking, we'll live through this." "Statistically? Not everyone," said the prematurely gray tech in the harness across from her. Adler, that was his name. Statistically, someone in a red shirt's going back tits up.
Not just one,
said the tech with the mismatched eyes. Judging by the scar, the right one was an implant. He probably couldn't have afforded the matching color.
Casualty rates go up with mission size.
How'd they rope you in?
Shuttle maintenance.
Eye guy thumped a panel. Swank, that was it. Webb remembered him now.
I go where this turkey goes.
Supply, said Adler. 4 missions a year or we lose our health coverage.
Wasn't Komontaros in supply?
Was, said Adler. Rack of shelves fell on him. Smashed him flatter than a pancake.
That's like what got Foley,
said Swank.
Right here in the shuttle, going through turbulence. Her harness held, but the one holding the Demetrium didn't, and splat.
I'm in agriculture.
8 forced a smile.
It's my first mission.
Adler and Swank blanched. Our condolences. 8 looked alarmed.
What?
Nothing, said Adler. I'm sure you'll be fine.
Fresh fish always come back,
said Swank. The pilot snorted. 8 hiccuped. You'll be fine, said Webb. You're in friggin' agriculture.
So was McSherry,
said Swank.
He popped a pod by mistake and choked out on the chems.
He glanced at the pallet of agropods lashed to the floor.
Those look secure, though.
I don't know, said Adler. That's where the Demetrium was. 8 sank deeper into her seat. What about you, Chatterbox? Adler asked Webb. Webb let out a long breath. Screw it. It hardly mattered now. I volunteered. They looked incredulous. What, were you drunk?
Murphy drunk volunteered once,
said Swank.
He bought it on Premia from a massive skull fracture.
Adler nodded somberly. Like a leaky red coconut.
Enough!
Blurted the Armstrong.
That's enough chatter. Let's keep it down.
Poor guy was even paler than 8. Looks like it wasn't just her first mission. Let me guess, Webb said to him. First away mission?
So?
He glared at her.
They told me not to talk to you.
Webb leaned in to 8, nodded at the Armstrong. See that acne farm over there? Armstrongs don't risk their own. If he's here, you know what that means?
What?
It means we'll be fine. And just like that, the shuttle popped out the bottom of the storm. The pilot set the shuttle down atop the stony outcropping of a gentle slope.
Checking atmo. Breathable,
she confirmed.
Temperature even, 11 degrees. Welcome to Planet Shithole.
She lowered the back hatch. At the base of the slope, packed earth stretched out beneath a dirty yellow sky. The Xeno ruins squatted ominously on the desert plain below, looking like a series of entrances to cathedral naves, their pattern repeating over and over as far as the horizon stretched. Webb and the other redshirts waited for the Armstrong, their appointed leader, to realize they were all looking at him. When he finally did, he flushed.
Shut up!
He flushed harder when he realized how stupid that sounded.
Try calming the ship.
The pilot hit her badge.
Shuttle to Independence.
There was no reply. She cast her eyes up at the storm swirling above them. Storm's eating the signal.
I can hear that.
He unbuckled his harness.
Let's get the stuff unpacked and set anchor.
Copy.
Swank unfolded the grav jack and offloaded the gear. Webb took her first step onto an unsettled planet in years. The last one had also involved a shuttle, one she'd been flying. It struck her that she'd never see this again. The majesty of this moment. Those towering ruins extending off under an alien sky. She regarded their distant arcing curves in sadness and wonder. The ruins seemed to echo the feelings back at her. Her head swam. She considered raiding the shuttle's medkit for a rehydrator. 8 lowered her binoculars.
Huh.
Webb looked a question at her. 8 handed over the binocs, pointed to the plain. Through them, Webb saw a series of rotten, circular fields in the near distance, stretching in a line from the plain towards the ruins. What am I looking at?
Barley? Sorghum? That first one was wheat. The others are too far away to tell given the decay.
Webb lowered the binocs. How long have they been here?
Not long. Since whenever the Flagstaff was here. But they've taken a lot of damage in that time.
The storms?
Most likely, said 8. But take another look at the breakage. If it were just the storms, they'd all be flattened in the same patterns. Those look broken.
Webb handed the binoculars back. What's that mean?
It means this place might not be as promising as settlement assessed. They flag any rock that ticks all the right boxes, yeah? Climate, atmo, within the habitable band.
Water. Water was the forefront of Webb's mind. Her throat was dry as the Mojave.
So what's wrong with it?
8 handed her a canteen.
Could be that soil isn't hospitable to the bacteria in the ponds. If that doesn't take, you get no growth cycle.
She hefted one of the globe-headed agropods.
These are optimized for high-yield harvests, but they get those by sucking a ton of minerals out of the soil. They don't bother replacing those because why would they?
Webb eyed the fields.
Is that why we're burning through so many resource worlds?
8 nodded.
On a hospitable rock, they'll extract all nutrients from the soil in a few cycles. Once there's a downturn in yield, the settlers pull up stakes and go to the next planet. Colonizers only stay long enough to turn a planet into food or ore or whatever else until their transports are full.
She stooped, crumbled a pinch of soil between her fingers.
Could be the crops fail because they're all aggressive strains. You can't pull out what isn't in the soil.
Does that explain the breakage?
Not really.
She looked out over the broken fields.
Sure seems a long way to go for another load of soybeans. Makes you wonder why we don't just fab everything. That sounds like dissident talk, technician,
said the Armstrong.
You can get yourself brigged for that. Sorry, sir. Just thinking out loud. Won't happen again.
Webb regarded her frankly. I might come to regret not knowing you, 8.
That's not my name. 6 months, right?
Webb's grin faded. Right. She'll be well and gone by then. Yolanda 8 picked a pair of agropods from the pallet with the care of an artist choosing her brushes.
I need to repeat the experiment, see if I can determine why the test fields degraded so quickly.
What have you got there?
Corn and beans,
said 8.
I'm going to jerry-rig a mulpa, see if getting them to grow around one another will help. It mixes the crop, but the structures support each other and they're more stable than a monoculture. If it holds, I'll add squashes and tomatoes.
Webb's mouth watered. The promise of real, fresh vegetables. That sounds amazing. I'll go with you.
You'll stay in the shuttle, said Armstrong. Make yourself useful and get that anchor set.
Webb watched 8 tread down towards the fields. The mousy agrotech seemed to have gotten over her fear. Webb couldn't really remember what that felt like. Not so much being over the fear, but not being jaded. She kind of envied that 8 still had the spark. The teleportation anchor was metallic mesh stretched out between translator pylons. The moment she turned it on, their badges all chimed in unison. The kid tapped his badge.
Bilson to the Independence. Anchor's in place.
Copy, technician, Blackwell calmed back. Stand by for transport. The air shimmered before them and seemed to split. With a whiff of ozone, Blackwell appeared, and then the captain, and then most of the rest of the bridge crew. Winesboro, Sivos, Ose the communications officer, and Dr. Marwazi. Webb felt her heart shimmer and seem to split. Marwazi noticed her, his brow furrowed. Webb realized her hair was still a plate-like protrusion on the side of her head. She flushed, mentally kicked herself. Too late to grab a handful of grease to plaster it down. A flash from the flat hand, a burst of blue light veined with yellow, and a circular cornfield unfolded on the plain. The storm seemed to worsen in reply. The captain shook his head, looked sidelong at the new field. That's one of yours, he told Winesboro. The science officer leisurely looked 8's way. The one operating independently? She acted without orders. Get your tech under control. Oh, you mean the one I'm not micromanaging? Webb snorted, too loud because Winesboro looked her way. He shot her a nod and the snap guns. Webb hid her smile, which wasn't hard, drowned as it was by the annoying realization that her last day was turning out well. Because of course it would, damn it. Alien ruins, stimulating conversation, and the actual officers she liked in play. Maybe she shouldn't have given up on away missions for all those years. Maybe it was just karmic balance for the hangover. The captain strode to the top of the ridge and struck an unnecessary pose above the officers. Somewhere in this system, the flagstaff vanished. While locating the ship is our highest priority, we owe it to the Coalition to map this planet and explore its ruins. You'll recall that we're outside Coalition space, so salvage rules apply. Ah, thought Webb. That explains all the bridge crew. No one wanted to miss a chance to pad their retirement. You'll also recall that your lay is 1/50th of any profits acquired over the course of our deployment, with 40% going to the Coalition, which, of course, doesn't apply if you don't happen to find anything. He winked, knowing chuckles from the crew. Now, let's go expand the realms of men. The officers whooped and ran towards the ruins. Their escort of soldiers followed at a trot. Blackwell had told her to stay with the shuttle. Since it was her last day, he'd explained with a smirk there was no point putting her at risk. At risk meant seeing the cool stuff in the ruins, an actual fun perk of the job. Webb didn't mind. It gave her a chance to put some work in on the cog finder. She hadn't given up on the idea of selling copies if she could work out the kinks. And it wasn't like she had much else to do. She couldn't stay outside with the storm worsening. Ever since 8 had popped her agropod, the winds had picked up and the temperature had dropped to single digits. Grit was pounding the sides of the shuttle in a miniature hailstorm. Only an idiot would be out in that. Bilson was out in that, puking vodka and regret against the side of the shuttle. Webb had never seen the Armstrong initiation ritual before. The Armstrongs, who'd teeped down with the officers, had encircled Bilson and told him to claim the planet. He'd done so, planting the flag, the Armstrong one, not the Coalition's, urinating a circle around it, and bellowing, "Calum Nostrum!" The Armstrongs pinned their blood drop badge on him and made him drink about a quart of alcohol from a pump. Now her unit commander was hunkered down in the storm, retching out his last few meals and, by the sound of it, several childhood memories. She almost felt sorry for him. She couldn't, though, since he wouldn't even have a hangover. They'd given him the rehydrator. So distracted had she been by Bilson's heaving that she hadn't noticed the cog finder light up. She studied it in surprise. Its monitor couldn't draw an accurate background. The heavy metals in the planet's bones were preventing that. But there was activity on its screen. Blips. Several of them. That was odd. No chance there was a cog out there. Cogs didn't go on away missions. The risk of loss was too costly. Webb dialed down the scope of her scan. The blips were coming from the ruins. The finder must have caught a signal echo bouncing around in there. That would explain the multiple hits. But not what originated it. Maybe a cog had wandered into a teleporter stream and gotten whisked down? Teeping sometimes futz with their neural circuitry. It was possible one had come down by accident and wandered off. Hell, maybe she could claim it as salvage and sell it back to the Coalition. She chuckled. A runner popped his head into the shuttle. "Unit Commander?" Webb jerked her thumb towards the wall. Bilson puked on cue. "What's up?" "Comms are down," said the runner. "Command wants us to regroup at the fields." "Out in that?" "Affirmative. We're running the message team to team." "Efficient." Comms didn't go from comm to comm. They had to go to the ship first to be logged. The storm must be interfering with things again. "Need a breather?" "Please." The runner collapsed into a harness. "You want wino or Marwazi?" Webb's heart leapt. "Oh, I guess I'll take the doctor. Where is he?" The runner gestured towards the ruins, towards the area where her cog finder was blipping. 2 birds with 1 stone it was. Webb stepped out into the storm. "I'm leaving my post," she told Bilson. "If that's okay, don't say anything." Bilson didn't. He wasn't in much of a position to, not lying against the shuttle in a puddle of his own vomit. Webb laid a blanket over him. He muttered a thank you and lost consciousness. Webb hustled overland towards the ruins. They were farther away and far larger than they appeared at a distance. Their tapered entrances towered above, their surfaces pitted by age and erosion. Any writing or decorative work on the stone had been lost to time. Webb couldn't get a real sense of their scale. Too much of the ruins' interior were buried in sand. The dunes and an eon's worth of wind had filled the chamber leading back to the plain. She wondered, not for the first time, who built the place and why. Not her concern. Her mission was having a sober conversation with Marwazi before she mustered out. She followed the little glowing tags the away team had left to mark their path into the ruins. Those were required by the reg, but few of the teams followed them. It was tedious stopping to log your position every 100 meters. Plus, if you did stop, you were wasting precious tomb-looting time and inviting another team to lap you. Webb was glad to see Marwazi had marked his way. It was one of the things she liked about him, his adherence to regulations. Those kept the crew safe. She left the light behind her and entered the high-ceilinged chamber with corridors that went off at angles through the ceiling. It was too dark to tell if that was the intent of the design, or if an upper floor had collapsed and been buried in the sands. Some sort of stony air ducts, perhaps? In the shadows behind her, something skittered across the sand. Webb whirled, heart thrumming. She saw nothing there, could hear nothing but the rumble of the distant storm. The Armstrongs were probably pranking her, stupid assholes. She wished she were armed. Another skitter from the ceiling this time. It startled a yelp out of her. The chamber echoed the yelp back at her from all directions. Screw it. Marwazi wasn't that hot. She turned and ran, tripped over something solid, and found herself sliding down a slope. She couldn't tell how far until she hit a stony floor. Webb rose on unsteady feet, felt back at the slope. Its angle was steep. She couldn't see a damn thing. Panic settled over her. The comms were down. She hadn't seen a tag in a while, and she had no light. She'd fallen into these ruins, and oh God, they were never going to find her, and why had she thought the day was turning out well? A beam of light turned a corner. She whirled towards it. Hello? A glowing bolt like lightning threw her up against the slope. For a moment of blinding pain, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her guts all seized at once. She pitched forward and convulsed. Marwazi, staring in shock, lowered his sidearm. Oh, dearest God, I am so dreadfully sorry. Quite the seizure there. Up we go. She felt Adler take hold of her arm. He helped her up. Good thing that was on stun, Doc.
Morrison took a close-range stun on Inbar 6.
Swank lit up the chamber with his headlamp.
Internal hemorrhaging did him in.
Webb's guts burned.
Ugh, you shot me,
she managed. Marwazi holstered his sidearm and took out his scanner. Please, tell me what are the painies.
Pretty much where you shot me. Isn't that a direct violation of your oath?
I'm afraid you don't look so good, technician.
That's probably the hangover,
said Adler. Webb's head finally stopped spinning. Her stomach didn't, though, and made a motion to adjourn. Her esophagus seconded. No, not here, not in front of her crush. She clutched her guts and vomited copiously. Swank stepped back and let out a low whistle.
Morrison barfed too. First symptom, really.
Webb slid onto her butt. I'm fine. She wasn't. Really, just let me sit here for a few weeks. I can't believe you shot me. Their badges chimed in unison. Postponing search and survey, Blackwell said over the comms. Webb snorted. Of course they're working now. Reconvene at the T-Banker. Marwazi tapped his badge. Copy. Sir, we've had an accidental weapons discharge. A pause. Is everyone all right? I shot a technician. At least no one was hurt. Blackwell out. Marwazi handed a data pad to Adler. Please increase the brightness of the tags upon your return. I'll escort the patient back. With a nod from the doc, Adler and Swank disappeared around the corner. She heard the clap of boots on the stairs. There were stairs? Of course their bunking were. She glared at the slope she'd slid down and blinked in surprise at the vomit pooled at its base. Do you need help to stand? Said the doctor. Webb ignored him. Her eyes had adjusted enough that she could watch her spew spread across the floor, across the oddly smooth, almost polished floor. 2 lines of the liquid suddenly darted off to the side in perfect parallel, terminating at a section of wall. Technician, Marwazi stooped in front of her. Are you hurt? She shushed him. Look, she pointed. Those are tracks. Tracks? Yeah. Slim and shallow, but there, clearly engineered. For what? If I had to guess, she teetered over to the wall, found a stony outcropping, and pulled. A stone door slid out of the wall along the tracks in the floor. The corridor beyond glowed an eerie blue. Marwazi's jaw dropped. He stared down the glowing corridor in childlike wonder. Oh, technician, what have you found? Webb could only shake her head. This could only happen on her last day. Want to find out?